Welcome back to Liz and Sandro's Marketing Podcast. We're the podcast that gives digital marketing news, advice, tips, and ideas to help your small business grow. Today, we're giving you 4 marketing tips for nonprofits. And I threw this idea out to Liz because last night, our cinema client had a free screening of a film called The Hate You Give, a recent film dealing with race and socioeconomic relations. We had 3 nonprofits there as co-hosts, and one of them stopped me and said, "Oh my gosh, you guys did the social media promotion for this so well. You guys were all over it." And it was just a lot of praise for the work we did for it. And I thought to myself, we really didn't do that much for it, to be honest with you. I literally wrote one tweet and just scheduled it and rewrote it differently so Twitter wouldn't think we were doing the same tweet over and over. But it wasn't that much work. And I thought, holy cow, what are you doing? And I looked at their Twitter account, the nonprofits, and they were literally going weeks and weeks without posting anything. So I thought, what are some simple things we can do that nonprofits could do to help with their marketing? And I threw it out to Liz.
Yeah, so we put our heads together and came up with 4 ideas. Some of them are pretty basic. Some are a little bit more advanced. They certainly apply to for-profit companies as well. But I think this would be a great starting point if you're a small nonprofit. So our first tip is building on what Sandro just talked about, how they're silent on social media for weeks at a time. Invest in a third-party scheduling tool. And actually, now that I'm looking at our notes, I don't even say, we wouldn't even have to say invest, because Hootsuite offers a free
completely
version.
Free,
Buffer
30 free posts.
Offers a free version. Yeah,
completely
so
free, yeah.
It's more a matter of creating the account, tasking or delegating someone in your organization to own this project and run with it. But yeah, you don't even have to.
Doesn't cost anything.
Right. But at any rate, a third-party scheduling tool is by far the way to go. And when we get to our 4th tip, you'll see why. But it's going to take so much stress and pressure off of you knowing that. Well, let's just jump to the 4th tip then, because it'll build on this. So we're also suggesting that.
And let me just say quickly, I think people still don't realize there are scheduling software out there. So
good
scheduling
point.
software
Good point.
is great. On Mondays, you could sit down, or on Tuesdays, or whatever day of the week, sit down for an hour and just write out or create your posts and just schedule them and just keep pushing out throughout the week. You'll forget about them. Set it and forget it kind of thing.
That is a good point. I forget that.
Yeah. So just realize there are scheduling tools out there. That's our
first tip. And to build on this, our next tip would be to create a bank or a repository of evergreen content that is always going to be relevant. Maybe it's about your mission or the work that you do that's applicable to share at any point, at any time during the year. Sit down. Yes, it's going to take a couple hours, maybe even a day, when you consider the fact that you need to draft everything, create graphics, hashtags, proofread it. Yeah, that's going to take some time. But if you have 30, 40, maybe even 50 evergreen posts that you can send out, you can schedule at any point in time, I think it's going to make a tremendous difference, because so many nonprofits are event and fundraiser driven. And I know how this goes. The weeks leading up to any event are crazy. The last thing you're worried about is what's going out on my Facebook page. You're so focused on the event. And if you can have that scheduled, ready to go, you're going to avoid that 3-week dead zone of nothing going out to your fans and followers. So I'm a huge fan of evergreen content. We have this for every client. We go back to it again and again. And yes, every couple years it needs updated, maybe with new stats or just, new info. But I think it's really important.
So many nonprofits help people. Maybe you can use pictures of those people. I know we're helping an orphanage, and this will go to our next tip, but we got pictures of the kids and smiling, or some of the kids playing. Those are things that pull at your heartstrings, or potential donors' heartstrings. Evergreen content is pictures of these kids. Evergreen content would be saying how much every dollar goes towards a meal, or helping 4 kids' meals, or their education, buys a book or something.
Or you're helping so many puppies or cats, whatever it is.
Yeah.
For sure. So to build on this thought of evergreen content, our next tip is to invest in someone who can help tell your story, someone outside of your organization. Actually, one of our listeners, Jim, a longtime friend and listener of the show, told me years ago, he kept saying to me, Liz, every nonprofit could use you. They really need help with storytelling. And that was like a kind of a new buzzword at the time. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. But the more I work with nonprofits, the more I see that to be true. I see them doing work on social, putting out content. I see them throwing together an email newsletter, a couple paragraphs, sending it out to their subscriber list. And that's great, don't get me wrong. But sometimes you step back and you're like, wow, that is such a missed opportunity to really tell an exciting story that's going to engage people. And it's really hard to do that yourself. I'm not necessarily saying you need to invest in the most expensive agency or consultant in town. Your budget may not accommodate that, but someone outside of your organization. Truthfully, I'm not a huge fan of interns unless you get a really good journalism or English intern who's an amazing writer and can help tell the story. I would lean towards someone who has professional experience. I'm okay if it's a volunteer. Maybe it's someone in the marketing space that wants to that has a passion for your organization's mission and give a little bit of time to help tell your story. Certainly, if you can compensate the individual, I think you're going to get a better story potentially. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, I'm a big believer in working with someone outside because you are so close to what you do every day. Sometimes you just can't step back and see the bigger picture.
I was going to say, you can't see through trees or the forest or whatever that is.
Whatever that stupid phrase is, I can never get it right.
And I was telling Liz, we're working with an orphanage. They don't have anywhere on their website the word orphanage, but everything they do pointed to that word. And I know I asked them straight out, are you guys an orphanage? And they finally admitted, yes, we are. And Liz pointed out maybe there's some negative connotations to it. But
But
when you're looking for money from donors or you're looking for donations,
sometimes you have to just use language. Get to the point. Use language that people know,
can relate to. Yeah.
And I hate to use maybe a word that some people have an icky association with, but spin it how you want to or how you need to. And again, I'm not saying be deceptive. We could, say something like, we are a forward-thinking orphanage that works with children ages 5 to 10 to do this, this, and this. Like, there's nothing icky about that. I actually think it's much more clear.
Yeah, and this organization's goals is to get their kids into college. That's something a lot of orphanages that I know of or that I've heard of, or when I think of orphanages, that's not a goal of theirs. But this one, that's their goal.
Oh,
yeah. So and they didn't even realize that that's a way to spin it or to sell themselves. Sometimes you do need somebody from the outside to think, hey, here's a way to look at it.
Definitely. I remember when I was updating it ultimately ended up being my resume and LinkedIn profile. And I was like, let me hire someone to do this. One, so I have the accountability that it actually gets done. But I had several conversations with her, and in my mind, I'm just telling her, I'm telling her my story through my lens, which doesn't seem all that impressive. And then she came back with all of this great stuff. And it wasn't groundbreaking. She didn't spin it terribly. She wasn't grossly over-exaggerating everything that I'd done, but just the outside perspective, the outside just maybe touch, whatever little touches she added to it, I was like, whoa, this is me, and this is my story. And I'm really not that impressive. But it was a tremendous help to have that outside perspective.
Side note, when I was 18 writing my first resume, I worked at a gas station, and my buddy's like, you should put petroleum sales and re-engineering. Or I was like, oh, yeah.
That is a great spin.
And redistribution, petroleum sales and redistribution.
Like, that's what you put as your job title?
Yeah, on my freshman year of college. And my counselor loved it. She's like, that's great. She's like, what does this mean? And I was like, oh, I pumped gas. I redistributed gas from the pump
to the car.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, but that's how you got to get noticed.
Creativity.
Yeah.
And thinking outside the box. Somebody else. You're right.
Yeah.
And our fourth tip is something that I've seen more and more, and I love it. But Liz has much more experience with it, so I'll let her take it from here.
Make friends with the media. When you have a good story to tell, you want to be prepared to capitalize on that. It's certainly not going to be every week, every month. Maybe it's only a couple times a year. But
when you have your event or something.
Exactly. But yeah, when you have that piece that is newsworthy, you want to get the most out of it. And that doesn't happen by just contacting someone once.
Press release.
This is not a press release maybe 3 weeks before your event. You have to build a relationship with them. And that sounds, nebulous, and what does that even mean? And I think I'll really quickly run through some tips. First of all, figure out who's relevant, who's applicable, what bloggers, what reporters, what editors are writing about your space, and start to build a relationship with them. Follow them on Twitter, connect with them on LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever channels you're using. When they are writing, just every day they're writing, feel free to jump in and comment, send them an email. Be like, hey, I really liked the story you wrote about how the nonprofit landscape is changing in Cleveland. Whatever it is, jump in so they start to recognize your name and start to associate you with whatever nonprofit you're working with. And then when you do have your story to tell, your email comes across their inbox and they're not scratching their head thinking, well, who is this? You've already built some rapport with them. They recognize your name. That's going to go a long way in getting the coverage you need to, again, over the course of many, many years. It's not going to happen overnight, and again, it's not going to be coverage every day, every week, every month, but when the opportunity presents itself, you need to be ready.
And let me just jump in and reiterate what you said earlier, Liz. One of my favorite ways to reach reporters on behalf of some clients or nonprofits that I've worked with is through Twitter. They check their Twitter messages. Those morning shows in your local TV station, the local ones, they love to tweet starting at 4 a.m. and they'll check their messages. Nobody else is DMing them at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m. So you might as well shoot them a message, say, hey, I love what you do. We've got this event coming up, or this is what we do. If you need a story idea, here's one. Because they're always looking for story ideas. There's slow days.
Yep.
Even the sports list talk show I listen to, it's Super Bowl's over.
What are they going to talk about now?
Nothing to talk about. So they've got people coming in promoting movies and doing all these other things.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with sports.
Yeah, I've found that journalists and reporters, they love Twitter. It's a great... And when you look at the platform as a whole, that's where a lot of breaking news really comes out quickly. So yeah, and that's not to say you don't also want to reach out through official channels, have the press release. Yeah, you don't want to ignore that, but yeah, build the relationship through Twitter. I think you'll find that to be pretty helpful. It's
a great first step if you're looking for a first step to start this.
Yeah. So I think those were our 4 tips. So scheduling tool, evergreen content, work with someone who can help tell your story, and make friends with the media.
So if you're a nonprofit and you have questions, we'd love to hear them. We don't work in the nonprofit world completely. We're not.
No, I think we each have clients in this space. Correct. And there are some unique challenges in the nonprofit. When you think of for-profit and nonprofit, they do have some unique challenges.
Right. So we'd love to hear your story. We'd love to hear your challenges, and maybe we'll address them here on the show.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
You'll find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll also have our email address in the show notes. Drop us a line. If you like what you hear, we'd love a review on iTunes. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time.